I'd like to convene this meeting of the January 18th, 2022 meeting of the Manhattan City Commission, and we would welcome all of you, especially the audience. We'd like to begin by having you stand, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'd like to invite those present who are here for the proclamation to please come forward and meet in front of the commission room. We have a full house. Please come on closer. I don't know how close as you're comfortable. Great.
Okay. Sure.
Can I get this picture?
Please.
Okay. Do you see my smile under my mask?
Okay, mask down. Yep, there you go.
Sign of the times. We'll all know what year it was, right? Okay. Yeah. We're here this evening to recognize National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month. And I'm sorry, with a mask it's a little harder to understand, but I'll try and speak slowly and be really clear. This evening we have Vern Henricks. We know locally with the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, but he is also the district governor for Rotary. And Rotary, they'll tell you, is really emphasizing the issue of trying to suppress, do away, whatever, with human trafficking. And next we have Memory Fuffington, and I've not met her yet, but Yusha Reddy, City Commissioner, and Robin Cole from Pawnee Mental Health. And so at this point, I'll read the proclamation, or an abbreviated form. It's pretty long. Whereas each year, thousands of men, women, and children, I'm going to face this way, are victims of modern-day slavery and deprived of their freedom, their human rights, and their dignity. Trafficking takes the form of forced labor, sex trafficking, child soldiers, and involuntary domestic servitude. Labor trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, and obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Whereas the U.S. Department of Justice has identified Kansas as an originating state for human trafficking. Kansas is in a place to stop more traffickers than ever before and give the victims of this heinous crime the assistance they need and deserve. Raising awareness of the driving force behind sex trafficking, the demand for commercial sex is critical in combating human trafficking. Buyers who create this demand must be held accountable for their role in sex trafficking. Buying is not a victimless crime. Now, therefore, I, Linda Morse, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, do hereby proclaim the month of January as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month in the City of Manhattan, and encourage all our citizens to become more informed on this growing problem, to be vigilant and report suspicious activity, and to work towards solutions to end trafficking in all forms in our community. If you see something that doesn't look right, take action and call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So at this point, we have a proclamation. Each of these Those present this evening represent different organizations, and they're all anxious to get one of our proclamations. So I'll just pass this along, and I'll invite one or more of you to come forward and speak, please.
Thank you, Mayor Morris. So when Mayor Morris says each of us represent a different organization, we are here on behalf of Rotary. So Robin Cole is president of the Manhattan Rotary. Memory Buffington is a member of the Kanza Manhattan Rotary. And of course, our district governor for 5710 is for a Rotary as well. And I'm president for the Rotary Club of Community Action Against Human Trafficking. We are an e-club, and that's all we do. Our primary focus and dedication is to eradicate human trafficking. And on that note, I want to say our Attorney General, Derek Schmidt, on January 11th, in partnership with Rotaries across our district and a few other districts and Rotary International, we're going to try to put out posters with the National Human Trafficking Hotline in our businesses and other public sectors, and we will be doing outreach. And if anybody is interested in those posters, please reach out to any one of us or contact your chambers or the Attorney General's office. It's extremely important to bring about awareness and education and make sure that number is right there in front of people that need it. Thank you.
Since this is a Manhattan Proclamation, I would also like to bring awareness. We have an organization in town called Homestead Ministries that's doing a lot of work to help women get out of the trafficking and the process. And we also have another young lady in Manhattan that actually is in Haiti in a mission work where she's actually helping young Haitian boys try to avoid the trafficking business. So this is a worldwide problem. Rotary has certainly taken it on itself. But I'm proud of our community of Manhattan. I'm certainly very proud of these individuals here in the club for their efforts, and you will probably hear more and more as we move forward through the years. So thank you for letting us do this, Mayor.
Memory, it's nice to meet you. Yusha Reddy, our city commissioner, is the president of it's not the traditional Rotary where you go and have lunch or breakfast. It's strictly online, and it has to be, Rotary has that kind of a club if you want to focus on one issue. So human trafficking is their issue, and I know that you're working closely with people in Topeka and Kansas City, Olathe, all over. But human trafficking is not limited to big cities. We have people who disappear every day in our small towns. So it is a problem, and we have to begin the work or keep the work. I know you've begun a long time ago, but each of us has to do what we can. So thank you all. Thank you, Vern. Okay. At this time, I'd like to open the public comments section of our meeting to anyone interested in making in-person comments, but they should not be related to an item on our agenda because there'll be a time later for that. Those, if anyone's, I think no one signed up ahead of time to speak, right? Right. So if there's anyone in this room that wishes to come forward and speak to an issue, please come forward. Hello.
Howdy, howdy.
Yeah.
Sorry I didn't sign up earlier.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Brad Everett, mine is going to be real quick. Trying to make sure I get an address that's in the city of Manhattan here. 3rd Street, there we go. I wanted to let everybody know, for those that haven't had a chance to see it, but we have one of Manhattan's Bright stars. I'm vaccinated, boosted, and Scorpio or whatever, so hopefully I'm okay to take the mask down. But Bridget Everett, my sister, I think Ned did a nice job with the Mercury, but she's had wonderful reviews, and she just premiered her show, It's Somebody Somewhere, and it highlights Manhattan, Kansas. In fact, there's footage, not all that was accepted, but of Reed and Elliott and different clips of Manhattan. And supposedly within the next week or two, she's going to meet with the HBO president and some of the brass to maybe extend into next season. But I splurged and spent $12 on HBO on her. But it is, which hopefully she'll be able to see this tape, but it's worth seeing. It really is a nice reflection of Manhattan, and she keeps dressed, which is a nice thing if anybody's seen some of my things my sister have done. So I think you'll find it in good taste and a good reflection of what Manhattan really, really is. It's a great community, and I think it's well represented. So at least want to tip my hat to her and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
I'm anxious to see it. I'm hoping we can have some kind of a showing here in Manhattan. So,
I give you my sign-on for HBO, but don't tell
oh, no. I understand that.
Okay, good evening. My name is Kevin Crawford. My wife and I met and lived in Manhattan some 30-odd years ago, moved to the Pacific Northwest. I have been on a city commission, a city council. I understand your job a little bit, and I know what it's like to be here until 1 or 2 in the morning when you deliberate over city business. So I'd ask for a little bit of indulgence as I go through this, but a little grace if I could. I am a cigar smoker, and I am sure that you have deliberated indoor smoking probably a million times here in the last year, but I'd like to bring about my thoughts on this anyway. I have been sober for 34 years. I don't drink, and I don't go to bars. I don't go to bars because there's alcohol there, and it calls to me if I'm there. So I would think that if you are not a cigar smoker, I don't look at you right now as going, well, get on board with this, right? But in the city of New York, I think it was, recently they passed a law where 32-ounce drinks were illegal, and they were worried about people's health. And to me, if I can speak candidly, that feels like government overreach. And being here and driving back and forth to Topeka in icy weather so that I don't have to sit outside to have a cigar, I tend to feel in that hour drive that it feels a little bit like government overreach to me to deny people the ability to have a cigar indoors. On beautiful days like today, I sat in the park. It was gorgeous. And I enjoyed 2 cigars, one in Long Park and one in Manhattan City Park. But there are families there and children there. And, you know, cigar smokers are going to smoke cigars. And I would think that if we had the ability to be inside of a private club or have the ability to be inside of a business, or if a business had the ability to make that decision, you know, it's opportunity cost. If a business owner decides that he doesn't want cigar smoke in his business because it will offend other patrons, he absolutely has that right. But if a private club, such as, say, the AMVETS, to me it's almost a slap in the face of the veteran to be able to say, I know that you fought for our country, you've done this, but you're not going to smoke anywhere indoors. And for those that don't wish to smoke, they don't have to belong to that particular club. It's my contention that this is a liberty. And when we say our Pledge of Allegiance, we talk about the liberties. And this is a civil liberty to me. And I would like the opportunity or the ability to be able to express myself sitting in a cigar club. And I'm sure that probably nobody on this dais is a cigar smoker that goes to a cigar club. But these are more like salons of the old days, you know, where they would sit and drink coffee or sit and discuss politics, religion, peace. They are very upscale intellectual places where people go to just enjoy the company of other cigar smokers and be a part of that salon. I'm sure you've deliberated and talked about this to death, but I would like you to reconsider the idea of opening up a cigar lounge or being able to smoke indoors as owned by a business owner to make that decision for the business itself. If a business decides not to have smoking, that's their right, and I support that 100%. But if a business decides that they want to open up so that they could invite smokers to be there, I think that's their right as well. And I don't have any formal papers to give you. I've looked online, I've seen things where soda is considered more dangerous than having a cigar a day. You know, it takes 40 minutes or so to smoke a cigar. You can drink a 12-ounce Coke in about 30 seconds. But if you drink 40 minutes worth of soda, of course you're going to have diabetes and get sick and ill. So what happens when the council decides that there's no donuts?
Mr. Crawford,
Thank you.
we have a time limit of 5 minutes, and I appreciate you coming this evening.
Great, thank you so
It's
much.
not something we have talked about. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
I have a question for clarification,
Yeah.
not to, are you, or do you know somebody that's pondering opening up a cigar club if the laws were changed?
I just spoke to somebody this afternoon who he sells cigars in his shop, and he would like the ability to extend it to a lounge.
Okay, I think there's someone who has, are there other?
Yeah, she's coming.
Yeah, we have one person, Alexandria Julian, who signed up in advance to speak, and so she is prepared. She has a PowerPoint.
Thank you. Last meeting I went to was a bit more packed.
Yeah. I'm sorry you had to come back, but I appreciate it.
It gave me an idea of what I was facing.
There you go. Really get to.
Okay. Thank you for addressing my issue today, first of all. I know you have more time-pressing matters probably, but I believe this is an issue of social justice and modernization with very simple solutions. Manhattan needs to update the regressive dog ordinance. The terms used in Ordinance 6466 and the list of example breeds contribute to negative stigmas of specific breeds of dog, which hurt the quality of life for every dog born under them. Breed-neutral terms would enforce the same regulations on every dog based on their actions instead of the size or breed, which is used in the ordinance to identify aggressive dogs. Additionally, the definition of an aggressive dog is stated in a manner that insinuates specific dogs can be born bad. Although Manhattan does not enforce these regulations as aggressively as other places, the existence of them in written law poses a threat nonetheless, as it allows fear to govern where justice should. This ordinance would be the guideline if a case did occur. So how does someone know if their dog is dangerous? In the ordinance, a dangerous dog includes any of the following: a dog which has a propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack unprovoked. If you analyze these terms, you can see propensity is an inclination or natural tendency to behave in a particular way, and tendency is an inclination toward a particular type of behavior. Disposition is an inherent quality of mind and character. With those words in mind and the implications of the predetermined fates encouraged by them, let's analyze the consequences for dogs who are born too large or into the wrong breed. A publicly displayed sign that says "Beware of dog" in easily read letters. Notify the city clerk with any updates, even the death of the dog. get $100,000 liability insurance, as well as these other listed regulations. Breed-specific laws punish the entire species for the crimes of singular animals, while breed-neutral laws only enforce punishment on the animals who show aggression or cause danger. The fix to this is quite complicated, but there are smaller solutions that can aid the damage that's already been done. In Manhattan specifically, we can update the ordinance with breed-neutral terminology. I personally have already found 3 potential solutions, and I sent them to you. Delete the list of example breeds because it targets breeds who have already suffered from aggressive stigmas for years. And lose some of the arbitrary regulations, like having a posted notice on the property where a dog lives and is considered aggressive by birthright. Along with the arbitrary regulations, the last paragraph of 6466 clarifies the justification of the death penalty as follows. If a dog represents a continued threat of harm to humans or to other domestic animals, either because the court finds that the keeper is unlikely to comply or that the dog is still dangerous when following these provisions, the court will order the animal to be destroyed. The latter is the only acceptable justification, and barely, because rehabilitation is an option, just as it is for humans. And if the keeper is unlikely to comply with the rules, then is the dog causing danger, or is the keeper endangering others, including the dog? I want to see a better Manhattan. Making these changes will have a small but positive impact on the issues with negative stigmas against dogs. Manhattan is known for being friendly and progressive. This change will inspire more support for our city and contribute to a brighter future with less hate. And as I said, I know you have more time-sensitive issues, but I hope that my stance has opened your hearts to the idea that the work it would take to change this ordinance is not only worth it, but vital. If you take a look at my shirt, these dogs have been targeted for years. It says dogfighting ends with me. This is a pit bull. They were targeted before dogfighting. They were targeted before they were known as dog fighters, and that increased the number of pit bulls who were dog fighters. Before them were Rottweilers. Poodles were on the list at one point. Dalmatians. And if you look at the list of the breed dogs in this ordinance, you can see that it has nothing to do with size. It is specifically about breed. Because there are no Great Danes, there are no Mastiffs, and I have 3 Mastiffs living in my apartment complex. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alexandria, thank you for coming. We appreciate hearing. We've not had anybody visit with us about that, so thank you.
Of course. Does anyone have questions for me? Well, thank you then.
Are there questions? I don't think we can ask questions during public comments. You'll have to visit with us individually, I think.
Right.
Okay,
I just
thank
thought since
you.
he asked a question.
This page turn. Okay. Are there other public comments? Does anyone else wish to make a statement or address the commission? Seeing no one, I'll go on with the commissioner opportunity for commissioner comments. This item is for any commissioner to share their thinking tonight. So if you'd start at John? No? Wynn? Yusha?
Yes, I do want to tell Brad, I did watch the show.
Did
I really
you?
liked it.
Yeah.
It may not be for families in general, but it was really, really good. And I like Bridget anyway, so it was really well done. I also want to say, first, welcome to our Kansas State University students. They're back in town, and glad to have them back always. Also, like it was mentioned earlier, it is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, so hopefully people take a little bit of time to, know a little bit more about what that means. It's not just about sex trafficking, but there's also labor trafficking, and there will be a summit in April about financial institutions and their role in human trafficking, so I'll bring that up a little bit later also. Again, just go Chiefs and go K-State this weekend. Thank you.
Okay. I'd just like to say that at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we kept it short and adjourned early because K-State was playing a bowl game that evening, and we won. And I just want to recognize and congratulate the K-State football team for the bowl game, 42-20. It's a good way. But the future appears bright as the 2021 season closed with an 8-5 record. This team seems pretty stable compared to other Big 12 teams for next year, and we will look to September 10th, which is the home game with Missouri coming to town. I'd also like to just make sure that we recognize, this is Director Butler of the Riley County Police Department. His last day will be January 31st, and I just feel it's important that we thank him and express our appreciation, the appreciation of our city for his leadership and service as he retires after 3 years. We wished he would stay longer, but we know and understand what retirement is, so it's an opportunity. The other thing is that COVID will be with us for some weeks to come, and as a matter of fact, I even got an email today about the federal opportunity. Sign up and they'll mail you 4 test kits to your home address. So that's an interesting thing just happening. So if you get that opportunity, please order them. Okay, having completed commissioner comments, the next section is the consent agenda. And the items on the consent agenda are those of a routine and housekeeping nature or those which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. A commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda for more discussion. Does the commission have any questions or comments on any of the consent agenda items?
Yes, item F. I just have a question for staff, or maybe the commission when they originally put this out, is we did a request for qualifications versus a request for proposal. And the estimate for this is 300,000 to 600,000, so 100% different. So, and I read through the, request for qualifications, and it didn't seem that complicated. Why didn't we ask for some numbers to get some competition versus doing a selection and then coming up with the number?
Sure. Our primary policy is a qualifications-based selection process as opposed to a fee-based selection process. I wasn't on the selection committee, so either Jared or Commissioner Morris might be able to speak to it specifically, but I know they were looking at, what are some of the distinguishing factors that a particular firm might have available as this process, and I think some of them involve some local businesses in that process as opposed to partners for other aspects. If you proceed, the next step would be to have a scope of services that meets expectations, and certainly that fee process is very negotiable as to what that scope would entail. But the primary aspect is that it was based on a qualification-based proposal. We're looking for someone that has experience, that have done some of these updates in the past, especially that complies with the Department of Transportation's requirements.
I think that the first thing we'll be doing, that Jared and the staff will be working with this company to develop a scope of services. We aren't even sure how to develop that. This is an area that we have no real expert in. And I hope I didn't misspeak. Jared, why don't you speak?
Yeah, I was just going to point out that the next step is developing that scope and fee. When you conduct a self-evaluation, it's going to take into account over 20 facilities, thousands of sidewalks all across the community and rights of way, as well as over 30 parks, and then all of the programs that we offer. There's that analysis that needs to go into account, and then the transition plan being developed. There's many different ways that you can conduct this process, which is why we're doing a qualifications-based approach. That scope is really going to be developed by staff, and then that scope and fee is going to be developed with the selected consultant and brought back to the City Commission, because there are certain levels that you can do some of these things. There can be a lot of GIS applications that can be involved. public engagement is required by the federal government, at what level of public engagement. That is something that we're going to define with the firm. So that is why we went with a qualification-based approach, because if we would have done an RFP, that would have limited the scope to a certain degree and wouldn't have given us the flexibility to talk about that with the firm and develop the right solution that we wanted to conduct with the self-evaluation and transition plan.
So who is making us do this, and what leverage do they hold over us to make us do it?
So I'll take that. The last self-evaluation plan and transition plan was developed in the 90s. And so the Department of Transportation is, and through the federal funds we get from transportation grant proposals, as well as pass-through funds, in the state of Kansas, the Kansas Department of Transportation is requiring all of its recipients to update their plans. Our policy and the plan we've had basically says as you do new projects, we did quite a few improvements back in the day prior to this plan being formed. Most of those were focused on some of our sidewalks and ramps and other infrastructure, but as the general rule was as you make improvements or you rip up an intersection, you have to bring the whole intersection into compliance. That's why you've seen different aspects of the improvements being made. And so part of this is to recognize how much we've done and what other areas that we have remaining to do, what's on our improvement list, and what priority do we have. Since then, there's certainly been a lot more technology improvement from just tones or lights at sensors for crosswalks, as an example, is the primary provision. So a lot of the improvements are focused on transportation related, but it's not limited to that.
And if we don't update it now and then, we move down the list when we start submitting grants to the feds or to the state. Essentially, we're mildly frowned upon.
We won't be as competitive in getting federal or state grants. Yes.
It goes a little bit beyond just receiving money. It's a risk. And you can be sued for not being up to ADA standards. So we do need to engage the public. There are probably several initiatives we need to undertake in order to meet some of those guidelines. But you do run a risk of ignoring this. And it goes well beyond just getting state and federal money. There are cities out there that have been sued and they had to invest millions.
Yeah, I want just one follow-up on that. Now, what we're voting on is for you to negotiate with this company for the scope, basically. We're not committing any money tonight, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, yeah, and then I'd be interested in following that up, because my concern, just like Mark said, okay, you're being forced to do this indirectly. And I still remember years ago, if I was on the commission, we had, I guess it was Mr. Toby that made a big issue, and we went through all kinds of things. So I understand why, we need to do it. But I really think the scope should be limited to updating the plan and crossing the i's and t's according to the state and federal government, but we don't need to go overboard. And I definitely don't like a $600,000 price tag. That's, I think, way out of range for this. I think $300,000 seems exorbitant to me. But so I'm really interested in looking at that, but I understand we should go ahead and negotiate with this company tonight.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add the comment. I understand that it's not cookie cutter and you want to look at those qualifications, but at the same time, this is being done all over the country with a lot of cities. I think there's a lot of benchmarks people could use and be able to figure out the scope and give you some competitive numbers. I just think we're at a disadvantage after already selected and then doing the, negotiations. So I just hope it comes closer to the 3 than it does the 6.
I view it as something that we just need to do. It would be, and has been probably, the easier thing to do, to kick it on down the road and not do it. And so I feel like we're being pushed now to update and do a complete this self-evaluation is a review that's necessary. I'm really glad we have a number of newer constructed buildings. I think that that will serve us well. I don't know so much about the sidewalks. We have new sidewalks, but we also have some really old ones. So I think it will do us good to get an assessment like this and then ask for them to prioritize what needs to be done first. Because we can't, there's no way any community could afford to just suddenly start making all the improvements that they would find. So I think it's a worthy undertaking. Are there other comments? Okay, thank you. At this point, we're ready.
I move, oh, do we need public comment?
Yeah. Are there any public comments on the consent agenda this evening? If there are, please come forward. Seeing no one, we'll go on with the, let's see. And so I guess with no public comments, or if there are no other commission comments, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Oh, we poll, excuse me. I'm sorry. Brenda?
Mayor Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, we're at the general agenda stage. And this, at which time we will consider a resolution number 011822-A, setting a public hearing on March the 1st, 2022, to expand the Starbond district boundary for the Art and Light Museum. Jason Hilgers, the Deputy City Manager, is going to lead us.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We have a item this evening that is really about a future discussion. We'll jump into some of the details tonight, but the hearing itself, as the Mayor described, would be set for March 1st if the resolution is passed this evening. This is the current boundary, the blue line around the south end redevelopment area in which the Starbond district currently exists. The public hearing will be a matter of adding the red dashed line along 3rd Street, Houston, 4th Street, and Pierre. In the past couple months, the owners of the future Art and Light Museum have been negotiating an alternative site. If you recall, several months ago, the commission adopted an amended redevelopment plan that would have allowed the new Art and Light Museum to be constructed here just south and east of the Flint Hills Discovery Center. And we went through a formal process. We adopted that as a governing body and as a community and started to receive some concern about occupying that parking, about it impacting neighboring businesses, neighboring owners. Even the Discovery Center had a little bit of heartburn with that, the loss of those 80 to 90 stalls. The owners of the Art and Light Museum started exploring an alternative site. The state of Kansas, Secretary of Commerce, Lieutenant Governor, expressed, an opinion that he was supportive of the project. The Starbond legislation allows for the expansion if it's contiguous to an existing district. So they started exploring the site just north of the Pierre Street within the block that I described. Initially, they were exploring the use of the city's parking lot, the land that the city owns, but the mall occupies in this town pavilion area. Today, that is used as mall parking. It is part of the lease with Manhattan Town Center. And as I mentioned, the city owns the land underneath that. There are 62 years remaining in that lease. So they've been approached by the DeBryans as to whether or not they'd be willing to sell their portion of the lease and then obviously come back to the city and look for that donation of land. We've had a few conversations about that. They started at a price point that was very high, and it wasn't something that the Bryans were able to afford. They kept talking with them all, and right before the holiday, they actually negotiated an amount that they could agree upon. At one time, we even talked about the city possibly participating in that transaction, and that is not where we are today. The DeBryans and the Manhattan Town Center have negotiated a price that doesn't involve the city. They would pay for that completely out of their pocket. There are several agreements yet to come. There's an agreement that would highlight this transaction of the Town Pavilion lot that would amend our lease with Manhattan Town Center, and it would allow the DeBryans to purchase that lot, basically buy out the lease, and the city would then transfer the land. In return, they would construct the Art and Light Museum with a total budget in that $35 to $40 million range, total investment, that would occupy that site in a way outlined here by the light green boundary. It incorporates the old Sears building, which is at that southeast corner of 4th and Houston. It expands into the parking area and the parking lot on the south and east portion of this parking lot. The design is materializing. The Bryans have a contractor on board, a design team on board. We will have to have an economic development agreement with the Bryans for the issuance of Starbonds, and again, highlighting the transfer of the property. There's a lot of work to do in the next 6 months, and a lot of that will be coming back to you. Those terms, those agreements, those amended leases, all these items will be coming back to you. Tonight, again, is about setting a hearing in March. I fully anticipate those documents, either in final form or draft, will be part of that packet for you all. It doesn't make a lot of sense to expand the district if you're not willing to execute those agreements. And those agreements and those terms will be ready for you in March to consider. Just tried to give you a preview of where we're at this evening in their negotiations and in those draft agreements as we put those together with both the mall and the DeBryans. Not overly complicate the issue, but yet still get that resolution under your consideration for that hearing date to be established. Once the district is considered for expansion and it's approved, hypothetically, we have to come back and re-adopt that amended plan again. So that same process we went through to adopt the plan south and east of the Discovery Center, we would have to consider for this new site. And that'll kick in a whole nother 3-month process. So we're into the middle of March with just expanding the district. We're going to be into May with the redevelopment plan. So transfer of this property and the issuance of bonds are really summer of 2022. Construction could start shortly thereafter. So that's kind of the timeline. We've got 6 months worth of state statutes to fulfill and bonds to draft. The bonds themselves are different than the star bonds we would have issued previously. These bonds are really a reflection of the revenues that will be generated through 2026 with 100% of that revenue dedicated towards this project with no moral obligation or future obligation of the city of Manhattan. We will truly be a conduit to allow these bonds to be issued so they can leverage primarily the state money. Our local money is about 5% of the total. 95% would be that from the city, from the state, I'm sorry. So our share of the star bonds has always been 95.5. Till 2026, that revenue stream would continue to flow through the trustee at the state to the bondholder. The owners and bond counsel more than likely are going to have to find a private placement for this bond, and that bond buyer will show up and take the risk for that revenue. The site itself is comprised of the parking lot. Obviously today, it is part of the overall mall property that is on the tax rolls. The loss of these stalls in this parcel, Greg McHenry and his team at the county will have to make a decision as to how much, if any, that impacts the value of that property. Most of the value, I would guess, is being derived from the buildings themselves, but it could have an impact on that total tax bill for the mall. We'll have to wait and see. The repurposing of the Sears building, it's clearly on the tax rolls today. Icon Investments is the owner, has a total value, it looks like, for 2021 of $885,000. That too will have to be evaluated by the county appraiser as to whether or not the nonprofit Art and Light Museum will be on the tax rolls, or if there will be any activity within that building that would qualify it for a taxable property. So that evaluation is yet to come. Again, tonight, resolution to set that date for the hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Jason, so 0 of those parking stalls on the east side of Town Pavilion are the Town Pavilion's parking spots. Correct. So if the Light and Art Museum will take all of those parking spots, they're going to need some parking for their own facility, and so they can perhaps negotiate with the Town Pavilion people or something.
How they choose to sign those will be up to them,
Yeah.
no different than any other private property owner. Okay. If you put the tow signs and you put the appropriate signage and you want to enforce it that way, you certainly can. No different than the Holiday Inn does just south of campus. You know, they regulate their lot pretty tight. Yeah. Call in when they can. Tickets can be issued. Tows aren't necessarily authorized. That's up to the officer. But they could absolutely sign this lot that way. They could also work with people who are in adjacency.
Okay. The other thing is, so is there any kind of a tax increment aspect of the sales tax that's collected from the office supply store and the pool house bar and whatever else there? Is there some kind of a cap or minimum thing there that the Starbonds is above that too then?
So the property that will be likely impacted by our local revenues is just this old Sears building. Okay. The businesses that are occupied in the structure just straight to the east, owned by Calvin, and then the building that's owned south of it by the Glasscock family, those businesses are slated to remain. Okay. So those incomes, or those sales tax, those property tax will remain. It's really the Sears building, that $885,000 building. I'm not privy, I don't know if there's anybody in that building actually generating sales tax at this point in time. Probably has been in the past, but there may not be now. But anybody generating sales tax here will then now become part of the Starbond district, and the state will capture that, peel it off, and send it to the trustees. So if there are sales tax being generated, whether it's our local or the state, pool house, for example, instead of coming into the city coffers, those will now go to support those star bonds through 2026.
Jason, this is Commissioner Reddy. So in the public hearing agreement, Section 5 for the public hearing, it also has Riley County Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Education. Do you need to go to them separately also and do a similar presentation, or is it just a public hearing for all entities at once?
They're noticed of the hearing. We will send them direct notice, just like we will send every owner on the north end and the south end and the expanded area. We'll send out over 240 notices of that hearing.
Okay. And 2026 is not really that far away. So what happens after that, like, for this?
Our Starbond district will expire in 2026. These bonds will expire in 2026, 2027. There's always residual revenues that come in from the prior year. They'll be eligible for that. But yeah, December 31, 2026 will be the last point in time the district exists. Okay. Anything after that, it will no longer exist. Those bonds will be exhausted, and the revenues will return, not only to the state, but to us locally, on the TIF side and the STAR side. There's a substantial increase coming for all three taxing jurisdictions in 2027.
Right. And you said there is no impact on the city. What you were saying earlier was whatever they collect is what they collect. We don't have to make up for anything.
So the impact will highlight in March. So there are some properties coming off, potentially, from a property tax perspective. There possibly some sales tax being generated inside that red hatched area that will no longer come to the city directly. They will go to the STAR bonds. Mm-hmm. We'll do that math. We'll show the calculation. But on the other side, they've got their own feasibility study, the construction impact of a $40 million building, the operation of that facility, and really we'll look at a 5-year window, because that 5-year window is truly, where the STAR bonds and the revenues could be captured. The property tax side, that could be obviously longer than the 5-year period for the area at which the museum is occupying space. So we'll have to look at their annual calcs in terms of what they're going to generate for transient guest tax, sales tax, and employment versus what that site's generating today.
And how long did they say it was going to take them to, let's say they started construction, I don't know, in the summer or whenever. How long did they anticipate it was going to take them to complete the project?
I think you're looking at a minimum of 12 to 18 months. Okay. Project of this size, Discovery Center, similar, well over a year. We were into the 15 to 18 month process. I think it was almost full 2 years to open it. So it'll be quite a duration. If let's just say it's fall of 22, it could be fall of 24 before it's open, and literally a year and a half later, you're going to be done financially.
Mm-hmm. And the operational costs and all of that is on the owners.
100%. Our development agreement will highlight that as well. The obligations of the city and the obligations of the owner.
And so you said 5% as the city obligation from the Starbond perspective, and 95% is state, and then there's additional private funding sources for this. I think it was good. I'm glad they found an alternative source or an alternative place. I know although we agreed to the original plan, we do know there was some challenges and some concerns from local businesses that were in that surrounding region. So I'm glad they were able to negotiate it to something that might be more compatible with the business owners around that area. But I look forward to hearing more about it. As far as the public hearing, I just hope everybody in that area knows and shows up and gives us their feedback as well.
Jason, I have a question about it appears from Exhibit B that the tax increment finance district and the Starbond district are the same. Is that true?
It is true.
Okay. That was an important distinction. Are there other questions from the commission?
Yes. You know what my question is, because it was asked of me, is what's the impact going to be on property tax? You've already kind of talked about it, you don't have a number, but I would see if you agree that there'll probably be some loss of property tax due to this coming in. But when we look at it later, you're going to put in some schedules for us to see best guess what that loss is. Here's the other gains, so we can look at a net number.
Correct.
John, I will tell you, based on the value of my office condominium versus 850,000, if it on a ratio, a $250,000 office condo is about $11,000 in property tax. So it's probably $40,000 worth of property tax or so that is being collected for the county, city, school board, school district, and the state. So our part's probably 25.
$5,000.
Yeah, not a lot where it's going to go.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much, but I just wanted to get an answer to the question for him. And it would be the loss to all those entities for
Yes.
that property tax, because none of them are going to get it, and they're going to have to make up for it.
Correct.
So when you come March the 1st, you'll be able to give us more detail about what the cost to the city might be. I think that we're all interested in knowing that. This, on its face, seeing a $44 million project is kind of dazzling. And so we want to make sure that we're not being dazzled, that we're being very practical. So, are there other questions, commissioners?
I think when we looked at this last time, we had a lot of public input, and they actually pushed for this new site. And a lot of people spoke on that. I think this is a better fit than the original plan. And then when we looked at the original plan, and I know Mark talked about it quite a bit, it looked like a decent return on investment when you looked at the, the amount of people this is going to generate coming to the city and the sales tax it was going to make. So that's also important to include, like, if we're going to lose $40,000 in property tax, but we got the potential to gain $200,000 in other revenue, then this is still a good bet. And then that's important to highlight, because there are some people concerned about that. But I'm still optimistic that this will shake out and be a very good project for the city.
I think it'll be a major tourism and attraction item for Manhattan, and just what we need as the economy has kind of faltered with COVID, and it seems that this would be a good, just a boon. If we've been in a stagnant economy here and not had a lot of new economic development, this seems like a generator, a startup thing that will benefit all of us. So sounds like.
I just wanted to say it's also a good vote of confidence from Secretary Tolan
Yep.
and the letter that also speaks volumes as far as their interest and commitment in this district and for this project.
And I like the fact that it's a local developer. That's, sometimes we just feel like people are cruising around the country, making decisions for local communities. And so this has a distinctive local flavor, and one that, a good for our local people stepping forward with something like this.
Yeah, Bob and Tracy have done an excellent job, the Bryans, and obviously they've done a masterful job negotiating with the Manhattan Town Center. We may have to get them on retainer and bring them back next time we negotiate with them all.
Okay. It would be an opportunity. Are there more comments? Are we ready for public comments? Does anyone, I'll open the meeting for public comments. Anyone that wishes to speak should come forward and sign in. Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment portion, and the commission can move on.
Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 011-822-A, setting the date for March 1st, 2022 for a public hearing on the expansion of the Starbond district.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. City Clerk Brenda, would you?
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy?
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morris.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Brenda, I couldn't spit your last name out. Brenda Wolf. All right, thank you. At this point, and I see no other business, so at this point, we're adjourned. Thank you.